Imagine a world where the vibrant panels of comic strips not only entertain but act as a canvas for social change. In the heart of the 20th century, amidst the winds of the civil rights movement, two iconic comic strips dared to introduce Black characters into their beloved strips. And today we're going to talk about it. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at OneMicHistory.com. Check out One Mic 2 for audio-only episodes. And let's get started. During the bustling era of the art world in the post-war America, a quiet but humble artist named Charles Schulz began sketching out scenes from the imaginative world where children spoke the profound truths and the simplicity of comic strips could mirror the complexities of the real world. This world was initially called Little Folks in 1947, but little did Schulz know that his creation would soon transform into the iconic Peanut strip by 1950, enchanting millions around the globe. Within Schulz's drawing, children rather than adults led the narrative. At the center of this universe was Charlie Brown, a lovable loser who embodied the perennial underdog. His failures to fly a kite, his unrequited love of the little redhead girl, his role as the world's most discouraged baseball team manager spoke to the deepest insecurities and unspoken disappointments in us all. What made Charlie Brown truly special is that he never gave up, no matter the setback. Each comic strip ended with hope, with a fresh start, galvanizing the readers with courage to face another day. As the Peanuts grew into a cultural staple during the 50s and 60s, it resonated as a source of comfort amidst a turbulent era. However, in the tumultuous spring of 1968, following Martin Luther King's assassination, the comic strip stood on the brink of significant change. This transformation was not propelled by Charles Schulz, but by a woman by the name of Harriet Glickman, a teacher deeply affected by the racial tensions and civil unrest. Believing that the power, subtle but potent shifts, Glickman reached out to Schulz with a bold idea to integrate a Black character into Peanuts. She argued that the inclusion could cultivate an understanding and empathy among its wide readership and impact many of the children who followed the strip. At first, Schulz was hesitant. He was acutely aware of the weight that this decision carried, and introducing a Black character as just a symbolic gesture could be seen as insincere. However, the persuasive Glickman did not relent. She consulted her Black friends who affirmed the importance of representing Black children in media. They too deserve to see themselves as part of the whimsical world that Schulz had created. Motivated by this feedback and moving with a blend of courage and caution, Schulz crafted the character of Franklin in July of 1968. Amidst the climate brimming with demands for equality and justice, Franklin made his debut. Schulz introduced him simply. Franklin came by Charlie Brown by returning his lost beach ball. They would converse as equals, and a friendship would blossom effortlessly. Yet, Franklin's arrival with the Peanuts was more than a quiet moment on a sandy beach. It was groundbreaking. Franklin was one of the first Black characters to appear in a popular comic strip. It was not a stereotyped side role, but as a friend sharing beach games and Thanksgiving dinner, challenging social norms. Despite this progressive nature of Franklin's inclusion, it was not met without resistance. Some Southern newspapers balked and threatened not to publish the strip. Schulz, supported by a quiet resolve and principles, stood firm against the backlash. He was prepared to risk his work syndication to maintain the integrity of the strip and its new character. He famously told his editor, "You either print it the way I draw it or I quit." Although Franklin's role stayed somewhat limited, Schulz feared misrepresenting experiences that he hadn't lived. Thus, he didn't delve too deeply into race issues. His presence was a steady, subtle force. Although Franklin helped normalize the inclusion of Black characters into children's entertainment, it was a small sketch that contributed to the larger picture of racial harmony. In contrast, in 1951, the world was introduced to the charmingly mischievous boy named Dennis in a comic strip called Dennis the Menace by Hank Ketchum. Love for his innocence and often intentional havoc, Dennis became a household name. His antics filled over 1,000 newspapers across the country. Ketchum was a keen observer of societal shifts and a supporter of the growing civil rights movement in the 60s, and sensed an opportunity to make his comic strip a platform for a subtle yet impactful discussion of race and equality. Ketchum saw an opportunity to mirror the changing America, so he created Jackson, the first black character to appear alongside Dennis. Ketchum introduced Jackson not as another character, but as a catalyst for fundamental lessons in racial perceptions. Drawing on Ketchum's favorite technique of using the power of innocence, Ketchum illustrated the poignant scene between Dennis misunderstanding race trouble to mean a simple race of speed, rather than an issue of skin color. It's supposed to show that children, in their purity, see beyond racial divides that often blind adults. A brilliant idea in theory, but its execution was steeped in controversy. This trail of Jackson echoed a style reminiscent of an older, derogatory depictions of black people like Little Black Sambo or a 19th century minstrel show. What Ketchum intended as a casual, friendly depiction was seen as a perpetuation of harmful stereotypes, and the reaction was immediate and fierce. In cities like Detroit, St. Louis, and Little Rock became stages for public outrage as rocks and bottles were thrown at newspaper delivery boys and threats were made to newspaper editors. Caught off guard and overseas at the time, Ketchum was devastated by the backlash. His aim had been to draw all his characters with certain exaggerated features for humor, but not to offend. He compared Jackson to other characters like Henry Mitchell or Mr. Wilson and pointed out their exaggerated quirks as well. But the damage was done. In an effort to calm the storm, Ketchum reached out and explained his intentions, stressing that the creation of Jackson was not meant to insult. Recognizing the character had stirred more anger than understanding, he decided to retire Jackson from the comic strip, a move that saw the character remain in the back of the ink bottle. Yet, the spirit of inclusivity did not fade from Ketchum's vision. After the Jackson episode in 1970, he launched a comic book entitled Dennis in the Caribbean, where Dennis interacts positively with people of color. And later, in an animated series in 1986, Ketchum introduced Jay Wilden, another African-American character who was also received positively without any of the previous characters' controversies. This character was crafted without stereotypes and embraced as just another one of Dennis's pals. In the colorful panels of the Peanuts and Dennis the Menace, artist Charles Schulz and Hank Ketchum painted a world where the innocence of comics could subtly challenge the stark realities of racial injustice. Although the characters like Franklin and the evolving portrayal of Jackson, these stories were not only to entertain, but spark crucial conversations on race and equality. And their efforts remind us that the simplest sketches can forge powerful pathways of understanding and change, and teach us that true courage lies in the lines that we draw and the efforts of the voices that we uplift. Thank you. This has been One Mic Black History. I'm your host, Country Boy. If you like stories like this, you can find more at OneMicHistory.com. Also, check out my second YouTube channel, One Mic 2, for audio-only episodes. I'd like to thank all my Patreon subscribers and my members. Without you, none of this can be possible. And peace.